Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Fitfam podcast. This is Hilary, Miss Natural Olympia.
And this is Doug, the Formulator.
And so we wanted to remind you that the Fitfam podcast is on all the Spotify channels just to listen to. But our favorite, it's on YouTube, so you could watch and listen to it too. And just would like to ask you to click the subscribe button down below and also the little bell so that you can get notifications when we have a new episode.
Yeah, you want to watch it because look how fly Doug's looking today.
Hey.
You see him when he wears that skirt.
I don't like these things. I like the color. That's right.
That looks nice.
All right. So this week, we're going to be talking about a subject that we get questions on a lot. It's about a very specific mineral that's super important and popular, especially with women. And we're just going to do a deep dive on it. So let us know if you kind of like these deep dives once in a while on one subject. And it's going to be calcium. And so we're talking about bone health. Specifically with calcium, because we could go down a whole bunch of avenues. Calcium is one of those minerals that is important for fat burning, for cognitive function, for just nerves to fire. But we're going to really focus in on it, which is most known for, and that is bone health. Yep.
Awesome.
But we're going to, as usual, do our holistic approach to it and use our acronym,
which is focused, intense thought, nutrition, exercise, and specific supplementation. So it's the acronym for fitness.
Absolutely. And this osteoporosis is one condition caused from low calcium that causes brittle bones in the body, and it affects a lot of people.
30 million people currently have osteoporosis.
And, you know, if you think about 300 million people in America and 30 million people have osteoporosis, you're like, wait, I don't know of that many people that claim they've been diagnosed with osteoporosis. Well, The truth of the matter is most of them don't even know it. It comes down to this statistically, finding out when people go on for different treatments and that they have osteoporosis, and being able to use an algorithm to say, look, based on these statistics, we know that over 30 million people have osteoporosis, although most don't realize it, which is really crazy number.
It's a crazy number. Yeah. So over 40,000 women will die this year due to complications of osteoporosis.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And it's mainly due to falling and like breaking a hip, breaking a bone. And it's not just the elderly. We're talking also younger women that lead to other complications that people don't realize, like heart disease and things that actually come from this lack of calcium, or calcium not being used where it's supposed to in the body, which is a crazy number. So I think that's why we really want to do a deep dive in this today, is because people don't realize how critical it is to not have the right amount of calcium, but also to make sure that the calcium you have is utilized where it's supposed to. And we're going to get into that in a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that when you are calcium deficient, it can lead to some really debilitating diseases, you know?
Yeah, big time. And it's actually the third most prevalent disease today, and a major cause of, like we mentioned, death and debilitation. Okay. And we talked about 30 million, and they actually now,
I think it's 40 million.
So 40 million
Mm-hmm.
that have it, but that, very low percentage has been diagnosed of it.
Yep, 4%,
So
less than 4%.
that's a crazy number. I don't know of any other disease, maybe autoimmune,
Yeah.
right? But other than autoimmune, I don't think there's a disease that is so, not misdiagnosed, but just people that haven't been diagnosed.
Because how would, unless you're dealing with a fall and you have some type of issue, how would you know that you're calcium deficient?
Yeah, it comes down to getting a special scan for bone density. Most people don't.
But I'm saying, how would you feel it? How would you feel that you're calcium deficient?
Yeah, what's interesting is that you feel it in the bones, right? And that's kind of a funny statement, but you have a great example of that, because we go through that multiple times a year, that you feel.
Yeah, I guess when nutrients get really, really low and macronutrients get really low, my teeth start to hurt.
Yeah, and it's usually just a week or two before a competition,
Yep.
right? It's that extreme level
Yep.
because Hilary takes a lot of calcium and stays up on it, and we monitor the blood work, and that's the other factor. You need to, and we'll talk about the testing, but you need to do blood work and you need to do a bone scan to be able to check that, and we'll go into that. But besides that, your question is a good one. It is, you feel it, and you can feel it in your bones, and it's different than an achy joint, right? It's actually in the bone itself, and most people feel it first in the teeth.
Yeah, what's interesting is if ever I do start to get that way when we're cutting hard for stage, I can take calcium and within a couple of hours, I feel better.
Max.
Yeah, max
sometimes
hours, yeah.
it's even sooner.
Minutes, yeah.
So, and there's really not a complete answer that's talked about much out there today for osteoporosis, this calcium issue. Like people say, I take enough calcium, what's the problem?
Or they say I drink enough milk.
They drink enough milk, and that's what we'll talk about. And so we're going to go through it holistically because there is a solution to this. There is a solution to this incredible disease that is not being diagnosed, and one that affects so many people. And realize that hormones are a factor too, because calcium is the one mineral needed to basically be present when fat is digested. And fats need to be digested for the body to make hormones. So if you're calcium deficient, your hormones could be off.
Really cool. Yeah.
So it's a really big factor. So let's go into kind of the mindset part of it. Constant Cardoza said that people will never make serious changes in their bodies without first making a change in their thinking. And so we've got to rethink calcium or rethink this condition in the body.
For sure.
So what is osteoporosis?
Porous bones.
Porous bone. And we'll put up some pictures and put in the show notes here too. But there's normal bone, and you think of it as just looking at these. What's the best way to explain it? Kind of like a honeycomb, like your bones, like honeycomb shape if you really go under the microscope. But the honeycomb itself is thick, and that's what it's supposed to be. So your bones are porous, but it should be thick with the holes being few and far between.
Right. Versus
osteoporotic bone to where it's actually really thin. And so it makes it easier. You can look at it, it's easier to crumble, right? It's easier to break. Yeah. And so I think that osteoporosis is, as you said, porous bone, right? And this whole thing about, well, just as we get older, our bones would just become more brittle, and that's just the way it is. That's a bunch of bunk.
Yeah, so Harris, how do you say his last name?
McKiween.
Oh, I'm glad I had your help there. Once thought to be the consequence of aging, we now know that osteoporosis is not a normal progression and can be prevented.
That's really cool.
I do like that because there's so many different ailments or things that we deal with as we get older that everybody thinks, well, it just happens. I'm at that age now.
Yeah.
And that's not how it should be.
And it happens with everything, right? We talk, oh, you're over 30, 35, you should go on testosterone.
Over 40, now you need glasses.
You need glasses, all these different things. And so the fact of the matter is that our body is not supposed to age that fast. And so the answer for medicine, Western medicine, is to jump to drugs. And we'll talk more about that too. It's not the way to go. So the one test that you would mention that's critical, and I recommend everyone do this a minimum of once every 2 years. It's a test that it doesn't change super quick, right? But it does change. I remember my mom had osteoporosis. We did the test and we tested her every year, and it improved to a point to where she no longer had any type of osteoporosis in the body. So the test is called a bone density scan, and you're asking to get measured for a T-score. So a T-score is a number. And that number will tell you how dense your bones are. And it's really important. And again, we'll put this up in the show notes because once you know your number, because it does take a while, you don't have to do the test.
So you're supposed to be measuring between 0 and 1.0. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So even from minus 1.0, so minus 1.0 to 0 is normal.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So if you have a positive number, boop, boop, you're actually way above the grade, because the normal is 0 to minus 1, because you do want the porous, right?
Okay.
You don't want it
Right.
And then the next one, a lot of people don't know about this condition, but it's an actual condition.
Yeah, osteopenia.
Osteopenia.
Yeah.
And that's minus 1 to minus 2.5. So when you get your T-score back, if it's minus 1 to minus 2.5, it's kind of like we hear prediabetes.
Okay.
Same concept, right? And it's like, wait, they're not as strong as it could be, but it's not likely that if you just have a basic fall, you'll break something in the body. And then the big one,
Yeah, osteoporosis, which is negative 2.5 and lower.
And lower.
Yeah.
And so, for example, my mom was minus 3.2. And then we put her on the right type of calcium we'll talk about, tried to get a lot of the acidity out of the diet, and then worked her way up in a couple of years all the way to normal was minus 1.0 or 0.9 even. So I think that's important to know that you can reverse this. It does take time and consistency though, but it's well worth it. And the thing is that one of the problems of that is the acidity, and we're going to get to that in the nutrition section. And
You're going to hear Doug rant about soda pop.
boom, you got it. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that everything in the body is alive.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about bone living and growing. Yeah.
And we think maybe that when we're young, but throughout our whole life, it is a living tissue. And it goes through a remodeling process. And that remodeling process, we won't get too deep, but it's important to know these things. It has two parts to it.
I'll let you go for it.
Okay, the first one's resorption. And there's special cells in the body that are called osteoclasts. And they actually go in and eat the bad bone, if you would. They actually are like a little Pac-Man, and they'll go and clean things up. Say, oh, this is too mushy of a bone, right?
Okay.
And not strong enough. And so the osteoclasts will actually eat those out. But then immediately after that, we have the formation phase where something called osteoblasts with a B for building, right? So osteoblasts with the C cavity, creates a cavity. I had to think of crazy things to remember this in school. So osteoclast cavity, osteoblasts come in and fill in that bone with stronger bone. So it kind of takes the bad bone out and replaces it with stronger bone. And that two-step process is critical. If all your body does is go through the osteoclast and it's being inhibited to come back and fill in those, then we're actually causing more problems than good. So that process is critical, and we've learned how we can help the body with the osteoclast, cleaning out the old, non-dense bone, and then coming in and replacing it with the osteoblasts. And so there's a process that our body goes through as we age, right? And so that it's obvious when we're younger that the body will go through that process, and it'll add bone faster than it's removed because we're building the bone itself, right? That's how the skeleton grows, is that these osteoblasts will come in and keep building, faster and faster in the body. And that's really kind of cool to think about. But then it slows down.
So after 30, bone removal begins to overtake bone replacement. So bone reaches its peak size and density.
Right. So at 30, it's not growing anymore, but it's still alive. And that's what people, I think, sometimes forget. And it becomes it's supposed to be a 1-to-1 ratio at that point, where it just gets rid of the bad guys. It comes, and puts it in. So we stay nice and strong in it. So once we're 30, we should be at this, close to a positive number with your T-score, and it should remain that way your whole life. And that's the goal, right?
Yeah. So for women between 45 and 55, menopause results in rapid bone loss. Women can lose up to 10 to 15% of bone mass in the 5 years following menopause.
That's serious.
That's
And it's
crazy.
because of, again, calcium is needed to help with fat absorption and the breaking down of fats. And so when you go through any type of a cycle, a growth cycle in the body, menopause, premenopause, that type of situation, right? Menopause. And so whatever it is, if you're going through a change hormonally is the point, then what happens is your body will use more calcium, and will use the calcium for the hormones over the bone. And so we start losing that bone mass. And that's really, really good point. And, after age of 65, men and women start losing at the same rate. And it gets to be pretty serious at that point of the loss. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen because of our lifestyles that's out there today. And so there was a study done in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, also shows, this was interesting because this study was a big deal to us when it came out. I was with the Sons at the time, and 97. And what happened was they did this study that we used to think, okay, this bone loss thing, it's an issue for as you get older and that. And they did a study with NBA players, and they found that due to sweat, that they lost a tremendous amount of calcium each day. In fact, it was 624.4 milligrams a day of calcium loss due to this sweating. So if you think about it, the amount of cardio you do, right, I don't lose as much milligrams of calcium. So,
Not near cardio of this guy.
but when you sweat, you lose a lot more calcium. You got to take that into play and increase that calcium dramatically. It's kind of like if you work out a lot, you need to increase your protein, but we don't think about that sometimes. And so we need to make sure we take in the right amount of calcium. And so there's risk factors that don't change that we need to really take a look at. So let's jump right into the nutrition side of it. This is a big factor. And, let's just start with the overall nutrition.
So 97% of the American population does not eat a balanced diet, which actually that doesn't surprise me. I mean, 97% is pretty big, but
we
a
see
lot of people don't have perfect diets for sure.
Yeah, and that comes from the USDA, right? So 97% don't eat a balanced diet, and you need a balanced diet, and that diet needs to change in different phases of your life to ensure that you're getting the right amount of calcium, right? And so the typical American diet, right, only provides about 450 to 500 milligrams of calcium a day, and that's well below what we need, even if we're not really active.
Yeah, so 99% of the body's calcium is found in the bones and in the teeth.
And that's why you feel it in the teeth
Right.
a lot, right? And so we know that we need to increase calcium amount in the body, but this is where it gets kind of funky, as we'll get into in supplementation, is like, okay, I've got to take thousands of milligrams of calcium. That's not true. You need to absorb calcium. And if you absorb it properly, you don't have to take these astronomical amounts if you take the right form of calcium. But there are diets that actually rob calcium in the body.
Yeah, so high protein diets like the Atkins or Zone diet.
Or a lot of bodybuilding diets.
A lot of bodybuilding
right?
diets, for sure.
Protein is acidic, and anything that's acidic will pull calcium from the body, and that's really important to know. That's why Hilary said I'm going to jump on the bandwagon of sodas, is because sodas are acidic. Coffee is acidic. Alcohol is acidic. All of those things pull calcium out of the body in a very fast rate. So we've got to do things to fix that. And one of the things is why I'm really big on alkaline foods. And if you're going to have something, just try to make it as alkaline as possible, because high protein diets will deplete the body of calcium. In fact, very specifically.
Wow. So for each gram of protein ingested, the amount of calcium deposited into the urine increases by 1 milligram.
So more protein, the more calcium that's depleted from the body. And that's really factored. And so even if you have too high or low of fats in the diet, it needs to be balanced.
That's why the whole thing is about a balanced diet. And that's why we teach a balanced diet. We never believe in cutting out one macronutrient entirely from your daily diet.
Absolutely. And really what it comes down to is fats, is most people eat too much processed fat and don't eat enough raw fat. And they think of cutting out fats, and many times they cut out all fats, and it's just a disaster.
Right. You need your healthy fats for sure.
So the deal is this. Look, the healthiest diet for bone health has been proven to be the Mediterranean diet. And the reason for that is because of the healthy fats in their diet. Daily extra virgin olive oil, daily avocados, daily things like algae, flaxseed, borage. All of these things are critical for you to take daily in the body. And so really important to have the healthier fats. It's best for your skin. It helps with calcium absorption. It helps with hormone, basically balancing, but also creation in the body.
Yeah, I think we always forget how necessary fat is to our diet and how we feel.
Absolutely. It does a lot of things.
Yeah, it does a lot of things. So hormone function, healthy skin, hair, nails, your metabolism, which is a big one, clear thinking. Sometimes I'm like, I have got to increase my fats because this brain needs to catch up sometimes. So calcium is necessary to digest fat.
Right. So when you have fat, there's an enzyme called lipase. And lipase is like a little Pac-Man, boop, 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 and it comes and eats the fat. And when it goes to eat the fat, there has to be something there to create an electrical charge to be able to make that happen. And that electrical charge in the case of fat digestion is calcium. And so we need the calcium. It's critical, and it'll be used to digest fat. And then liquid diets, low-calorie diets, again, will deplete the body.
And that's mostly because you're just lacking in overall nutrition in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the Calcium Banditos.
Wow, I see that you put that there.
The 3 Calcium Banditos.
Okay, so the 3 Banditos, white flour.
Absolutely, number one. When white flour was first brought on the market, the FDA came out and said, look, this is causing so many diseases and deaths. You can look it up. So many diseases, they pulled it from the market. Illegal to sell white flour because it causes so many diseases and deaths. One of the reasons is it leaches calcium from the body. And now they can't sell white flour unless it's been enriched. They add it back, but they add a crappy form back, so it doesn't do any good.
Right.
It torques me off. Bandito 1, stay away from white flour.
Yep.
You know, the second one,
Soda pop.
soda pop, biggie. Why? Acid, right? So I want you to really come to an understanding as we're talking through this. What is the problem here? Why do we have this deficiency? Acid is a big one.
For sure. And it's interesting because it's funny how soda pop comes back to a lot of the problems that we deal with our health. You know, anytime we're talking to somebody about diabetes or excess sugars in their diet, soda is something that they have.
Hormone balance issues, cognitive function, always improving because soda.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about soda that's high in sugar. We're talking about soda that is also diet soda. And then you're dealing with a whole nother set of problems when you're dealing with diet sodas, like Hashimoto's and
podcast on synthetic sugar.
So anyways, it's just interesting how a lot of ailments come back to soft drinks.
Yep, absolutely. Because you could pick any one of those things in them. So people will say, well, my soda doesn't have sugar. We still have the acid. Well, they don't have the acid. You still have the sugar and you have the chemicals. So just sodas in general, if you have them, have it be a special treat once in a while, and your body can deal with it. If you do it consistently, in other words, at least every day or every other day, it's going to cause issues. It's going to deplete calcium. It's going to make your bones brittle. You're going to die young. Don't do it.
So between 1960 and 1981, the consumption of soft drinks rose another 182%.
Since 1981, it's almost gone up another 200% in the latest study. So
crazy. And can I just interrupt, because I do know a lot of people that are like, no, I don't drink soda, but they drink energy drinks. And I'm like, soda, it's worse than. So anyway, you have to look at it as what it is. When you're drinking something that is carbonated, the carbonation is the specific issue when we're talking about calcium.
Phosphoric or carbonic acid, calcium killer. And the third, Bandito.
The one that's toughest for me, sugar.
Sugar. You're my sugar.
Thanks, babe.
No problem.
I really love sugar.
I know you do. And so everyone loves sugar because it's very addictive.
It is addictive.
And sugar is the devil. So basically, it's something that is really important to understand. Let's just stick with the subject today of sugar when it comes to bone and calcium loss in the body. And what happens with sugar, and a lot of people don't realize this, sugar is acidic.
Mm-hmm.
And sugar will leach calcium out of the body for a number of reasons. One is because it's just acidic. And two is when you get too much sugar in the body will take the sugars and bind 3 of the sugars together to get it out of the bloodstream so you don't die. You'll die if you have too much sugar in your body for too long. Your blood sugar will raise and you'll just croak. And so the body will take those sugars and combine them into 3 little molecules that sticks together called a triglyceride. And then it'll take and store that triglyceride, which is a fat, which the conversion takes calcium. And so now your body's dealing with the sugar, and your body uses more calcium to go through the process to save your dadgum life, and you're storing this excess fat, and it's all bad. And so quit it.
Quit it.
3 Banditos, white flour, soft drink, sugar. Stop them. Your life will improve dramatically.
So just back to sugar, we consume over 170 pounds of sugar per year per person.
170 pounds. That's a lot. I'm going to have to bring in some sugar so you can see how.
Start dumping sugar like we do at the high schools.
The high schools, local high schools, and just pour sugar. Let them know how much is in the soft drinks. And so it's really important that you do that. So
okay, so we went for the Banditos. Can we go over the Amigos?
3 Amigos.
Let's see what you did there.
Yeah, watch that. You got to watch that show. Classic.
It really is a classic. So
we agree on classic. It doesn't
probably the first classic we've ever agreed on.
Bloodsport?
No, it's not.
For the top?
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of like that.
That's good.
It's not a classic. Okay, so your whole grains, your fruits and vegetables, and your good fats. Those are the yays for calcium.
And the whole grains needs to be true, organic, non-GMO whole grains. I think it's funny how social media starts to build something up, but I know there's more people posting in there that have in the the 90s that they started spraying the crops with different things
Mm-hmm.
like synthetic B vitamins from folic acid and other things, and that created this problem that they're still doing that makes our grains and our breads different here in America. And as we learned when we went to London and Paris,
Yeah, you could eat pasta all day long and not deal with anything.
and breads and that
Yeah.
just was different, that you get sick after them. So the three amigos really important, but it's the type of the amigos, right? It's the whole grains, true
whole grains. Yeah.
Really clear about that. With oats and that, make sure they're steel cut, organic. The breads, as long as you do it right, then you can have whole grains in your diet and it'd be phenomenal. Right? You
Right.
do it wrong, it can be disastrous. That's why some people say, I stay away from breads. No, just get the right type of breads. Fruits and vegetables, as much as you can, as many as you can. That's
Organic is best if you can,
but
but
at
eat
least
your fruits and vegetables. Yeah.
absolutely.
And then your good fats. So we're talking about this was an interesting conversation that we had not too long ago with one of our clients, is that we've been working with them for a while, and they had said, yeah, no, we have nuts, and we kind of moved on, and I was like, well, hold on, make sure that they are raw nuts. And they didn't realize that. They didn't realize that there was a difference between nuts that had been roasted and raw nuts. So when we're talking about good fats and we say nuts, we mean raw cashews, raw pecans, raw almonds.
That's the key, raw.
They need to be raw. They can't be cooked because then it changes the fat and it becomes all bad. And then so your avocados, your extra virgin olive oils, your avocado oils.
Raw.
What else? Avocado
All raw.
itself.
Coconut.
Coconut.
Yep, absolutely. We went to the Olympia one year and had a big booth, and we back to show said, I like it raw. Raw.
That's special. Thank you for that.
Other factors, exercise, right?
Yep.
And so Surgeon General's report, my favorite Surgeon General's report, really, really old. It's the Everett Koop, best Surgeon General planet ever had, or the United States ever had. And he came out this huge study on exercise and showed that at that time even, we're talking back 30 years ago,
yes,
that 92% of the population was unfit, right?
Yeah, 1 in 4 people are completely inactive. 1 in 4 completely inactive.
And 96, I think it's probably worse now.
A sedentary lifestyle is a major contributor for osteoporosis.
So we know exercise is critical, and it kind of comes back to that old adage that we always hear, right?
Yeah, you don't use it, you lose it.
And it's true. If you don't lose it, and what do we mean by if you don't use it, you'll lose it when it comes to bone? Because your muscle's attached to the bone, right? We have an insertion, we have an origin point of your muscle, and it's always going to be on the bone. And in that case, it's putting pressure on that bone. And what the studies show is that if there's not pressure being put on the bone, in other words, a strong muscle, the body says, we don't need that much calcium there. We don't need to be that strong. And it'll use its resources somewhere else, because our body adapts very well to our environment, to our actions. And all of a sudden now we go to want to use that bone, and we need to because we're falling down, we need to grab ourselves or do something, then that bone's not strong. And they did that, what's called the high impact exercise study with tennis players. And with tennis players, they said, okay, this was way back when most tennis players use just one arm. Now it's pretty even, but it was way back in the late 80s. And they did this study, and they found that the arm that was used most with the tennis players, the bone density was much greater in that arm than the other arm. So we do know that the more you use your body with exercise and put pressure on the bone by strengthening your muscles, the denser it is. The body says, oh, we need calcium there. So super important to understand that exercise is critical.
So high impact exercise like jogging, walking, stair climbing, dancing.
Those are the ones that we'll want to stay away from if we have full osteoporosis.
Okay.
We'll want to do the others.
Okay.
But those are really critical. If you don't have osteoporosis, we should be doing some type of jogging, fast walking, stair climbing,
Okay.
that type of stuff.
Some HIIT exercise with high impact. Low impact exercises include swimming, indoor cycling, stretching. So those things would be great for somebody with osteoporosis.
Absolutely. And then the other one.
And then resistance training, of course. So strength training with weight.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This one's really important for people to understand. The studies are very clear on this. If you have osteoporosis, you should be doing resistance training. It should just be with a trainer or on specific machines called selectorized machines. Selectorized machines are machines you put the little pin in.
They kind of move with you.
Absolutely. And you just start and you do higher reps. You do a 12 to 15 rep range with the exercises when it comes to if you have osteoporosis. But that's one thing that was important that we've taken a lot of people through. Like I go back to my mom's scenario, is she would come over and
Yeah, your mom and dad. I mean, obviously your dad especially didn't do a lot, but he sure came over and he walked on that treadmill. I think it was like at a 2. And
Did a
but then
little
he'd
bit.
get off and he'd do some curls, he'd do some tricep presses, and that was clear until I mean, your mom was probably 85,
Yeah.
all the way up to 85 doing that, and your dad clear up to 90.
Yep.
And so the amount of weight that you can push will change, but it should be something that you consistently do your entire life.
Absolutely. Super critical. So exercise is critical, whether you have osteoporosis, osteopenia or not. It's just the form changes, get with the training.
Okay, let's jump into
Finish off.
supplementation.
Supplementation. So the body needs calcium.
Of calcium.
That's it.
That's it.
It's the biggest thing that is not understood or talked about
But I drink enough milk.
is, oh, you're killing me now. And so is a form of calcium, right?
Doug's least favorite thing is to hear people say they don't need calcium because they drink enough milk.
If you drink processed, homogenized milk, you're depleting your calcium. You're not adding to it. Studies are very clear, very, very clear. You can argue it all you want. The research is there. If you drink processed or homogenized milk, you're depleting your calcium because the homogenation and pasteurization process makes it so that it's acidic and the form of calcium that's in there can't be absorbed. So it actually pulls calcium from the body. Now, raw milk is a different ballgame.
Raw milk is different, right?
And
it's like anything else. Raw nuts are different than cooked nuts.
Absolutely.
Raw milk is different.
So there are many forms of calcium on the market, and the supplement companies and the pharmaceutical companies that own most of the supplement companies do not want you to know what we're going to tell you right now. And that is the form of calcium that gets absorbed in the body, into the cells, into the bones, is the form that comes from nature, that comes from the plants. And it's a specific name, and that's where it gets a little technical.
Okay, what's the name?
So it's called a bisglycinate chelate. You're like, what?
Glycinate. Chelate.
So bottom line is, here we have this rock in the ground. That rock could be iron, it could be calcium, it could be magnesium, but this is calcium. It's a rock.
And then you have a plant.
And we have a plant. The rock, the calcium goes into the plant,
Sucks it up.
and the plant will bind on both sides of it an amino acid called glycine. It's the lowest weight molecular,
High glycine.
lowest weight amino acid there is. We measure it by Dalton's. It's super low.
And that's why it's so much better, because the body is able to absorb it better.
Right. And a mineral can't be absorbed unless it's attached to something. And so what happens is pharmaceutical companies and other supplement companies, they'll bind to the calcium, things like carbonate, citrate, all these different
That's
things.
why you always see those names attached to your calcium. Calcium carbonate.
Right. And the problem is that isn't how nature does it. They're not absorbed as well. And so it's kind of a joke. What it needs to be is the calcium bound to 2 glycinates. Bis, 2, glycinate, chelated. Chelated means clawed, calcium. Okay?
Got it.
So that's it.
That's
it
it.
needs to be an organic bisglycinate, chelated calcium, and sometimes they'll say amino acid, chelated calcium.
There you
Chele is a Greek word for claw. So I just chelated Hilary, right? Clawed
You
onto
better
her.
check yourself.
There you go. And so that's all it is. So it's a chelated, a bound form of calcium with amino acids called glycine. I really want you to understand that because the research is very, very clear that it's the best absorbed form of calcium there is, and it's obeying the laws of nature. Everything else is a joke. We'll put in here a graph that shows the absorption level of
Is there a calcium that is next best to chelated calcium?
Yeah, so citrate isn't bad.
Okay.
So let's say that you couldn't buy any supplements and you had to make your own calcium.
Yeah.
You'd steak an egg, right, in lemon juice
And then drink it.
and let it sit there overnight in the refrigerator or two. Pull the egg out, and the calcium comes out of the cell you made, calcium citrate.
Interesting.
So, anyways, but it is next, but it isn't as good. So you
Right.
need the calcium, and there's a lot of things that I've heard people say. Well, I get my calcium from Tums and those types of things because they're calcium. They're calcium carbonate.
Dude, just anytime we even say the word Tums, I can't help but think of my father, and it just makes me...
And it's terrible for you. So Tums and all of those things are not good forms of calcium. They're terrible forms of calcium. They're terrible for you anyways. Go back to our digestion episode that we talk about Tums and that actually can cause disease in the body because it stops an important process in the body. So again, that if it's not the chelated, amino acid chelated, bisglycinate chelated form, it's not the right form, and many times it causes more harm than good. And the studies are very, very clear. One other nutrient, really quick.
Oh yeah, I always have ipriflavone.
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 It's a flavonoid, ipriflavone. We'll
Ipriflavone.
put it in there. It should be with the calcium. The research is clear that it helps calcium be absorbed, just like vitamin
Okay, so your calcium should be a calcium chelate, and it should also be combined with
ipriflavone.
ipriflavone.
And then you need to make sure you have enough vitamin D in your diet, but your calcium formula should be calcium and ipriflavone, the right
Okay.
form of calcium and ipriflavone. And then it will help with the stimulation of osteoblasts and osteoclasts in the body. So super, super important to do. Studies are very strong on it. Let's finish up. The bottom line is you need to have the right understanding and get rid of some of the myths about calcium and osteoporosis.
Yep. Did you want me to read that?
Sure.
Okay. Osteoporosis is the fastest rising and least diagnosed disease today. Many people who suffer a fracture never recover. So while calcium is extremely important for all ages, and we all need to make sure we're taking our calcium, for those of us with older parents, it is vital that we make sure that they are getting a proper calcium supplement in their diet, because we do not want to get the phone call that they've fallen and
Absolutely. And can't get up.
Can't get
So,
That's
so
terrible.
you want to make sure you understand it's preventable and it's curable, completely curable. Osteoporosis, low calcium issues in the body. Nutrition is key.
Nutrition is key.
Calcium-rich foods, which means vegetables,
Yeah.
berries, fruits,
Whole grains,
whole grains,
healthy fats.
and healthy fats, super important. Exercise, bone strength, depend on pressure and muscle strength.
Yep.
Put the pressure on the bone, do it right, and
Do some
supplementing.
resistance training and supplementation with chelated calcium. Say the word.
Ipriflavone.
Ipriflavone.
Make sure you have vitamin D in your diet.
And not only can it help you to build calcium, or to have calcium, it can help restore. It can actually help to, what is that word?
Replenish and restore.
Yeah, but like you can reverse. That's the word.
yeah,
you
you
can
can
reverse the signs of osteoporosis.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's really key with it. And the last nutrient we didn't talk about, was something called K2.
Oh,
K2 is a nutrient that pulls the calcium out of the places it shouldn't be. A lot of times it gets leached into the bloodstream and it pulls it back out and puts it back into the bone. So what we recommend is something like our Bone Plus Calcium, which is a calcium, the ipriflavone, and Longevity, which is a vitamin D with K2 in it. So you get the D to help with the calcium, you get the K2 to pull the calcium that shouldn't be in the bloodstream that got leached out of the bones and puts it back in the bones with the calcium. Those two products highly recommend. Clean up your diet, understand the mindset, exercise, bam, calcium, be your friend, strong bones, healthy life.
I had nothing else.
As always, Miss Natural Olympia, Hilary.
Doug the Formulator.
Appreciate y'all. Make sure you subscribe. Catch you on the next one.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.